Should not say he's Jacko. I'm not a Jacko. I'm Jackson. I have a heart and I have feelings. I feel that when you do that to me. It's not nice.
There are two versions of Michael Jackson the world thinks it knows. One is a 10-year-old boy standing on stage with the Jackson 5, delivering a voice so pure, so powerful, it felt like it carried the weight of a lifetime. And the other is a grown man, speaking softly, almost like a whisper, fragile, gentle. So different that people began to question if it was ever real at all. The same man, two completely different voices. So what happened in between? Was it a performance, a carefully crafted mask, or something much deeper shaped by fame, pressure, and control? In this documentary, we're going beyond the surface to uncover the hidden truth behind one of the most mysterious voices in music history. The contradictions, the secrets, and the voice the world may have never truly heard. So subscribe to Black Legend, because this story goes deeper than you think. Chapter 1. The Child Who Was Never Allowed to Grow Up, 1965 to 1975. Before the world heard the voice, there was a room, a father, and a child who was not allowed to fail. Gary, Indiana, late 1960s. Inside a small house, long before the fame of Michael Jackson, there was no spotlight, no applause, only long nights, tight spaces, and a boy learning that perfection was not a goal, but a requirement. His father, Joe Jackson, did not raise entertainers the way most parents raise children. He built them, shaped them, corrected them, over and over, until mistakes disappeared. A patinée at a quiet evening, the kind where other children are outside playing. But inside, Michael stands still, barely tall enough to meet his father's eyes, singing the same line again and again. He finishes. Silence. Then one word. Again. No praise, no comfort, just expectation. And in that moment, something settles deep inside him. Love is earned through performance. By the time he steps onto stage with the Jackson 5, Michael is already different. He doesn't just sing well, he sings like someone who understands pain, like someone who has something to prove. When he performs Who's Loving You, his voice trembles, not with fear, but with emotion that feels too heavy for a child. It makes people pause. It makes them feel something real. And that's what confuses everyone, because children don't usually carry that kind of depth. But Michael does. His mother, Katherine Jackson, once remembered a school performance where he sang Climb Every Mountain. The room didn't just applaud. Grown adults cried, not because he was cute, but because he was convincing. That's the hidden part of the story. Michael wasn't just learning notes and rhythm. He was learning how to deliver emotion on demand. Behind the curtain, there were no ordinary days, no careless laughter, no space to fail without consequence. Everything revolved around getting it right. And when the group began to rise, when the world started watching, the pressure changed shape, but never disappeared. The image had to be perfect, clean, safe, especially in a world that wasn't ready to fully accept them. Michael became the face of that image, bright, gentle, almost untouched by reality. But the truth was more complicated. He was still a child expected to feel like an adult, to perform like one, to carry the weight of a family and a future. In early interviews, you can still hear traces of who he was before everything shifted. A voice more grounded, more direct, less fragile. It hadn't been softened yet. It hadn't been shaped into what the world would later recognize. But change was coming, puberty was coming, and with it, the fear that everything could disappear. Because if his voice changed, what would be left? That fear is where the real transformation begins. Michael doesn't just train harder, he becomes aware. Aware that his voice is not just sound, it is identity, survival, expectation. And here is the quiet truth few people talk about. He begins to control not just how he sings, but how he exists through his voice. Because when your greatest gift is also your greatest responsibility, you don't leave it to chance. You shape it, you protect it. And sometimes, without even realizing it, you start to hide parts of yourself inside it. Chapter 2. When the Voice Became a Role, 1975 to 1982. What if the voice the world fell in love with wasn't the one he was born with? Mid-1970s. The spotlight hasn't faded, but something inside Michael Jackson is beginning to change. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but quietly and irreversibly. Puberty arrives the way it always does, uninvited, unstoppable. For most teenagers, it's awkward. For a child star, it's dangerous. Because for Michael, his voice is not just a part of him. It is him. It is the reason he stands on stage, the reason audiences scream, the reason his family survives. And now that voice is shifting, lower, heavier, uncertain. There is a moment, recalled in fragments by those who were there during a rehearsal in the mid-70s. Michael begins singing a familiar line, but something feels off. His voice cracks just slightly, not enough for most people to notice, but enough for him. The room freezes. He stops, not because someone told him to, but because he already knows. Something is slipping, something he cannot fully control. And in that silence, there is no panic on his face, only calculation. Because Michael had learned something long ago. If something threatens the performance, you don't wait for it to fix itself. You adapt. And that is exactly what he begins to do. While other child stars fade as their voices change, Michael does the opposite. He studies his own sound. He experiments. He tests different tones, different placements, different ways of speaking and singing. Not publicly, not obviously, but deliberately. He begins to understand that the human voice is not fixed. It is flexible, and if controlled precisely, it can be shaped. Around this time, those close to him start noticing subtle differences. In casual conversation, his voice is not as high as it appears in interviews. It drops. It steadies. It sounds older. But the moment cameras are present, something shifts. The tone lifts. The delivery softens. The words slow down, as if carefully placed. This is not an accident. According to Quincy Jones, the legendary producer who would later help create Thriller, Michael's natural speaking voice was deeper than what the public heard. Not dramatically different, but enough to notice, enough to raise a question: why wasn't he using it? The answer is complicated and uncomfortable, because by the late 1970s, Michael Jackson is no longer just a performer. He is an image, and that image has rules. It must remain approachable, non-threatening, gentle, especially in an industry and a society where perception can define success or destroy it. A deeper voice might signal maturity, authority, even aggression. A softer voice suggests innocence, safety, control, and Michael understands this better than anyone. There is another moment, quieter, more personal. He is speaking to someone off camera, relaxed, unguarded. His voice drops naturally. It's not exaggerated, not forced, just normal. Then someone enters the room. The energy changes. Michael straightens slightly. And when he speaks again, the tone has shifted, lighter, softer, almost familiar to what the world expects. It happens in seconds. That's when it becomes clear. This is not a limitation. It is a choice. But choices like this don't come without a cost. Because to maintain that version of himself, Michael has to stay within it, consistently, publicly, repeatedly. And over time, the line between performance and identity begins to blur. There are whispers, never fully confirmed but often repeated, that Michael became increasingly uncomfortable with his natural voice, that he described it as harsh, even ugly. Whether or not those exact words were used, the pattern is there. The avoidance, the control, the refinement of something softer, more delicate. It's not just about sound anymore. It's about protection. Because behind the scenes, Michael is changing, not just physically, but emotionally. The confident child performer is becoming a self-aware teenager. Fame is no longer exciting. It is suffocating. Every move is watched. Every word is analyzed. Every imperfection is magnified. In that environment, control becomes survival, and the voice becomes a shield. A softer tone disarms people. It lowers expectations. It creates distance. It says, "I'm not a threat." It says, "I'm still that child you remember, even when he isn't." And here lies one of the deepest, least discussed truths of this period. Michael Jackson didn't just preserve his voice, he preserved an idea of himself. The child who never grows up, the boy who never changes, the voice that never breaks. But reality doesn't disappear. It adapts. By the time he enters the late 70s, working toward what will become Off the Wall, Michael has achieved something almost impossible. His singing voice has matured, stronger, richer, more controlled, yet it retains the brightness that made him famous. He hasn't lost his gift. He has re-engineered it, but his speaking voice tells a different story. It is no longer just communication. It is performance. Every interview, every appearance, every word filtered through a version of himself that the world expects to see. And the most unsettling part, it works. People believe it. They accept it. They build an image around it. But behind that image, there is another voice, quieter, lower, less visible. A voice that appears in fragments, in private conversations, in unguarded moments, in flashes that disappear as quickly as they come. And the question that begins here, quietly, almost invisibly, will follow him for the rest of his life. If you spend enough time performing a version of yourself, at what point does it stop being an act? And at what point do you forget what your real voice sounds like? Chapter 3, Genius of Control, or A Man Trapped Inside His Own Voice, 1982 to 1993. At the height of his power, Michael Jackson didn't just use his voice, he became it. Los Angeles, 1982. Night falls quietly over Westlake Recording Studios. Inside, the air is thick, not with chaos, but with precision. Every sound matters. Every breath is intentional. This is where Michael Jackson is building Thriller, the album that will redefine music. But something else is happening here too, something far less visible. Michael stands alone in the vocal booth, headphones on, lights dim. Behind the glass, Quincy Jones watches closely. Engineers stay silent. No one interrupts him. Because when Michael records, he doesn't just sing lines, he constructs moments. Again, he says quietly, the track restarts. This time the line is sharper, more urgent, not louder, just more alive. He stops mid-phrase. No, that's not it. He rewinds, tries again. Hours pass like this. Same lyric, same melody, but every take is different. Not technically, emotionally. He's not fixing pitch. He's searching for something else, the feeling. This is where the myth begins to break, and something more complex takes its place. Because by this point, Michael is no longer just a singer. According to his vocal coach, Seth Riggs, his control over the human voice borders on unnatural. He can descend into low notes most pop singers avoid. He can rise effortlessly into piercing highs. His range stretches across nearly 4 octaves. But more importantly, he can place his voice exactly where he wants it, not just in pitch, but in character. And that's the key. Because what Michael is doing in that booth is not singing, he is acting. Take Billie Jean. The rhythm is tight, controlled, but his voice sits just behind the beat, calculated, restrained, almost paranoid. Every syllable feels like it's hiding something. Now listen to Beat It. Suddenly the tone shifts, harder, sharper, more aggressive. The consonants hit like percussion. It's not just a vocal performance, it's a personality shift. And then there's a moment, one that rarely gets talked about. During a late-night session for Thriller, Michael asks everyone to leave the room except Quincy. No engineers, no assistants, just silence. He wants to record something alone. Quincy hesitates but agrees. They roll tape. Michael begins softly, almost whispering. Then the sound changes. His voice tightens, cracks slightly, not from strain, but from emotion. It's raw, unfiltered, not polished like the takes before. When he finishes, there's a long pause. Quincy doesn't speak right away, because what he just heard wasn't the Michael Jackson the world knew. It was something deeper, something exposed. Michael listens back, and after a moment he shakes his head. No, that's too much. He erases it. That take is gone, forever. And with it, a glimpse of something real, something he wasn't ready to let the world hear. By the time Thriller is released, the transformation is complete. Michael Jackson is no longer just performing music. He is designing experiences. Every sound, every breath, every vocal texture is intentional. And the world responds. The album becomes the biggest-selling record in history. But a success has a side effect, expectation, and expectation builds pressure. By the time he enters the bad era in 1987, the stakes are higher. The sound evolves, the image sharpens, and so does his voice. Listen closely to tracks like Smooth Criminal. There's something different. The delivery is tighter, faster, almost urgent. His voice cuts through the rhythm like a blade. The phrasing is clipped, staccato, aggressive. It sounds like he's being chased or chasing something. Now shift to another moment, years later. Earth Song. A completely different space. The instrumentation builds slowly, and then his voice enters, not controlled, not precise, but breaking. It cracks, stretches, almost screams. It feels less like singing and more like a cry. Two songs, two voices, same man. This is where the question becomes unavoidable. How many versions of himself can one person hold? Behind the scenes, the answer is becoming complicated, because the more Michael perfects his ability to shift between these emotional states, the harder it becomes to separate them. The line between performance and identity starts to dissolve, and the voice, the thing he controls so perfectly, becomes the very thing that confines him. There's another story, quieter but revealing. During vocal training sessions, Seth Riggs would guide Michael through exercises, simple scales, controlled breathing, neutral tone. In those moments, Michael's voice sounded normal, balanced, not exaggerated, not fragile, just human. But when it came time to record, something would change. Michael would lean into the performance, push the emotion, shape the sound into something larger than life. Riggs once noted that Michael didn't struggle with technique. He struggled with application, not because he lacked skill, but because he was always reaching for something beyond it, something more intense, more real, or maybe more hidden. Because by the early 1990s, during the Dangerous era, a new layer appears. The music becomes darker, more complex. Themes of paranoia, identity, and isolation start to surface. And his voice follows. It becomes sharper in some moments, more fragile in others, less predictable, almost like it's reacting to something unseen. There is a tension in his performances now, a push and pull between control and release, between precision and collapse. And in rare, fleeting moments, when he's tired or emotional or caught off guard, his voice slips, not in pitch, in tone. It drops slightly, becomes fuller, less constructed. It's subtle, but it's there, a glimpse of something underneath, something he doesn't fully reveal. And this is where the mystery deepens. Because by this point, Michael Jackson has achieved something no other artist has. He doesn't just use his voice to express emotion, he uses it to create identities. Each song is a character, each performance, a transformation. But every transformation has a cost. Because when your voice becomes a tool for becoming someone else, what happens to the person underneath? There is no single answer. Only fragments, lost takes, unreleased moments, stories from those who were there, and a growing realization. Michael Jackson's voice was never just about sound. It was about control, about protection, about survival, and maybe about hiding something the world was never meant to hear. Chapter 4. When the World Began to Doubt, 1993 to 2005. The moment the accusations began, the voice changed again. Now flash to the 1993. The air outside the courthouse is heavy, crowded with cameras, reporters shouting questions, flashes exploding like lightning. This is no longer just about music. This is about survival, and at the center of it all stands Michael Jackson, dressed carefully, moving slowly, saying almost nothing. But when he does speak, something is different. Not dramatically, not obviously, but enough for people to notice, enough for people to question, because his voice, once seen as gentle, now becomes suspicious in the eyes of the public. Headlines begin to form, not just about allegations, but about him, his behavior, his personality, even his sound. That voice is fake. He's hiding something. No man sounds like that. The accusations don't need proof. They only need repetition, and repetition turns doubt into belief. Inside a private hotel suite, far from the cameras, the atmosphere feels completely different. The curtains are drawn, the room quiet, a few close associates present, and here, away from the pressure, Michael relaxes. His posture shifts, his shoulders drop slightly, and when he speaks, the tone changes. It is lower, fuller, more direct, not theatrical, not fragile, just human. This is the version described by people like Liza Minnelli, who once recalled the moment she overheard him speaking naturally on the phone. She recognized it instantly, not as a trick, but as something hidden in plain sight. The difference wasn't dramatic enough to expose him publicly, but it was real enough to raise a deeper question. Why hide it at all? Back outside, the world continues to close in. Reporters don't just ask about the allegations, they analyze everything. His clothes, his gestures, his voice. And the voice becomes a target because it is visible, repeatable, easy to mock. Late-night shows imitate it, tabloids exaggerate it, rumors evolve into narratives. One of the most damaging claims spreads quickly, that Michael used hormones to keep his voice high. There is no medical evidence, no verified source. But it doesn't matter. The story fits the image people are building. And once an idea feels believable, it doesn't need to be true. Now, picture another moment. 1993. Somewhere during the Dangerous World Tour. A backstage corridor, dimly lit, crew members moving quickly, tension hanging in the air. Michael has just come off stage, exhausted, breathing heavily. Someone approaches him with urgent news. Another headline, another accusation, another escalation. For a split second, the calm breaks. He turns, frustrated, and his voice drops, deep, sharp, almost unrecognizable from the public persona. It's not loud, but it carries weight, authority, anger. Then just as quickly, it disappears. The mask returns, the softness comes back, and the moment is gone. But those who heard it don't forget. This is where the shift becomes undeniable. The voice is no longer just a performance tool. It becomes a boundary, a shield, a way to control how much of himself the world can access. Because in a situation where every word can be twisted, every tone misinterpreted, controlling how you sound becomes a form of defense. A softer voice disarms people. It creates distance. It avoids confrontation. It keeps the narrative focused on vulnerability instead of power. By the late 1990s, another pattern emerges. Interviews become rare. Appearances become carefully managed. And when Michael does speak, the voice is consistent, gentle, measured, almost fragile. But behind closed doors, according to multiple accounts, that consistency doesn't always hold. People describe conversations where his tone shifts depending on the subject. Business discussions bring out a firmer, more grounded voice. Emotional topics bring back the softness. It's not random, it's adaptive, almost instinctive. There is a particular recollection from a journalist who once spoke with him privately. The conversation begins formally, with the familiar soft tone, but when the topic changes, moving from personal questions to contracts, negotiations, control, his voice drops slightly. Not dramatically, but enough to change the dynamic. The same man, but suddenly more assertive, more present. Then, as the conversation returns to public image, the softness returns, like a switch, like a role being resumed. And this is where the deeper truth begins to surface. This is no longer about technique. It's not about vocal training or range or style. This is about psychology, about adaptation, about survival in an environment where every version of yourself can be used against you. Because by this time, Michael Jackson is not just dealing with fame, he is dealing with scrutiny at a level few people ever experience. Every move is documented, every silence interpreted, every word dissected. In that kind of pressure, consistency becomes dangerous. Predictability becomes vulnerability. So he does what he has always done. He adjusts, he controls, he performs. But here's the hidden cost. The more you control how you sound, the harder it becomes to exist without that control. The voice that once felt natural starts to feel exposed. The constructed voice, the softer, safer version, becomes the default, not because it is more real, but because it is more manageable. And the world, watching from the outside, misunderstands it completely. What they see as deception may actually be protection. What they hear as artificial may actually be intentional. Because the question is no longer, is this his real voice? But rather, which version of himself is he allowing us to hear? Between 1993 and 2005, that question never fully goes away. It lingers in interviews, in courtroom footage, in rare off-guard moments. Sometimes the voice slips. Sometimes it holds perfectly. But always there is a sense that something is being held back. Not dramatically, not obviously, just enough to keep the real center out of reach. Because in a world that keeps trying to define him, label him, expose him, Michael Jackson learns to do the one thing that gives him control. He decides what the world gets to hear and what it never will. Chapter 5, The Man Behind the Voice, 2005 to 2009. In the end, the voice didn't disappear. It simply became quieter, more selective, and closer to the truth. On June 13, 2005, outside the Santa Maria courthouse, when Michael Jackson was acquitted of all charges, the world saw celebration, relief, even defiance. But what they didn't hear clearly was the shift that had already begun inside him. Because while the cameras captured the same soft, controlled voice, those standing just a little closer described something different, a tone that dropped slightly, more grounded, more tired, as if the effort of holding up the persona for so long was finally weighing on him. In the months that followed, particularly throughout late 2005 and early 2006, Michael withdrew almost completely from public life, spending extended time in Bahrain. And it was during this period, away from American media pressure, that people close to him began noticing subtle but revealing changes. His speech became more relaxed, less measured, and in private conversations, the voice many had speculated about for years appeared more frequently, not dramatically deeper, but undeniably more natural, less filtered, as if the performance layer was no longer required in every moment. By November 2006, during his appearance at the World Music Awards in London, observers noted that while his public speaking still carried the familiar softness, There were brief, almost unintentional drops in tone between phrases, especially when he addressed people directly off microphone. These were fleeting, easy to miss, but consistent with accounts from those around him who claimed that the public voice had become more of a switch than a constant, something he turned on when needed, rather than something he lived inside continuously. And then, moving into 2007 and 2008, as he quietly prepared for a return to music, collaborating with producers and revisiting unreleased material, there were increasing reports from studio environments that Michael's speaking voice varied depending on context. During casual discussions, especially late at night when sessions stretched on and fatigue set in, his tone would lower, become more direct, sometimes even sharp, especially when discussing creative control or business decisions, suggesting that the softer voice was no longer his only default, but rather one option among many. At the same time, there are lesser-known details, rarely highlighted publicly, that add another layer to this period. For instance, individuals who interacted with him privately during 2008 describe moments where Michael would laugh loudly, speak quickly, even interrupt others mid-conversation. Behaviors that contrasted sharply with the slow, gentle cadence the world associated with him. And in these moments, his voice carried a different energy, less restrained, more spontaneous, as if the years of careful modulation had loosened just enough to reveal something closer to instinct. Lisa Marie Presley had hinted at this years earlier, but by the final phase of his life, these glimpses seemed to occur more frequently, though still almost entirely outside the public eye. Then came March 5, 2009, at the O2 Arena in London, when Michael announced the This Is It residency. Standing before thousands, he spoke in the voice the world expected, soft, deliberate, almost ethereal. But even within that speech, there were subtle shifts, moments where his tone tightened, where the phrasing became more assertive, especially when he emphasized, "This is it," as if two versions of his vocal identity were briefly overlapping, not fully merging, but no longer completely separated either. In rehearsals that followed throughout April to June 2009, accounts from dancers and crew members suggest that Michael communicated differently behind the scenes, more direct, sometimes more authoritative, occasionally even playful in a way that required less vocal restraint, and during moments of frustration or urgency, his voice would reportedly drop, not as an act, but as a natural reaction, something that seemed less controlled and therefore more revealing. And yet, despite these changes, the public almost never witnessed this version of him, because even in his final months, Michael maintained the boundary he had built over decades. The voice the world heard remained consistent enough to preserve the image, while the voice beneath it surfaced only in fragments, in unrecorded conversations, in fleeting interactions, in memories held by those who were close enough to notice but not always able to prove. On June 25, 2009, when news of his death spread globally, the narrative that followed focused on his music, his legacy, his controversies, but not on the quiet evolution that had been happening in his final years, not on the possibility that the man himself had begun, slowly and cautiously, to step outside the voice he had crafted for survival. And perhaps that is the most overlooked truth of all. Michael Jackson did not suddenly reveal a real voice at the end of his life, nor did he abandon the one the world knew. Instead, he allowed the distance between them to narrow, just slightly, just enough for those paying attention to sense that something was changing. Because after decades of control, adaptation, and protection, the voice was no longer just a performance, and it was no longer just a shield. It was something more fluid, something that could shift without always needing to hide, something that, in rare and unguarded moments, sounded less like a role and more like a person. Maybe. After everything we've uncovered about Michael Jackson, the real question was never whether his voice was fake or real. It was why he needed more than one voice in the first place. Because when a man spends his entire life shaping how the world hears him, hiding parts of himself and protecting something deeper, then what we're listening to might not be deception at all. It might be adaptation. It might be defense. It might be the only way he knew how to survive. So now I want to ask you, which voice do you believe was the real Michael Jackson? Or do you think the world never truly heard it at all? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you want more stories like this, deeper, darker, and closer to the truth, don't forget to subscribe to Black Legend, because some legends are not what they seem.